Okay, thanks everyone for joining today. So live from Malibu, finally got a haircut and I'm ready to rock. Really looking forward to an exciting session today. Very strategic conversation that we're going to be having today. Very sales enabling conversation as well. So let's go ahead and get right into it. When we're looking at the agenda for today, you can see here on the screen some of the items. I'll start off with a market update, just kind of letting you know what's going on. A lot of activity you probably have heard in the press in the last couple of weeks. Also do a quick product review so that those of you that are newer will get a little glimpse into what we're doing and how we're approaching the market. After that, Patrick Mason will speak to healthcare, manufacturing, and also into hospitality. So three of the most common verticals that we are using in the energy space. Next, we're going to have Gerald Perry, who's going to be speaking about commercial real estate and specifically about looking at kind of taking a little deep dive into what some of the best practices are in that space. And then we've got Bob West, and he will speak to the data center space with some information and a case study as well. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So again, joining me today, and very excited about this panel. We've got today is Bob West, the co-founder of datacenters.com, which has generated 50,000 visitors and 10,000 companies per month. Also joining today is Gerald Perry, a cloud energy consultant who worked in energy in the past and has experience in energy. Also, his company does a great job in the commercial real estate space. So we're super excited to have him join us as well. And of course, our own Patrick Mason to talk about some of the efficiency products and services and the verticals. And I want to plug him really quickly. He does have a background in hospitality, so he'll be good to speak to that one. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. As you can see from this slide, we had an extreme winter weather that drove prices higher. And so this is something that a lot of people had projected, but we weren't sure about. Well, sure enough, it did happen, and it happened in a big way in the last couple of weeks. Higher highs and higher lows is what you're seeing from the graph, and low natural gas storage inventories into Q2 and Q3 will continue to drive prices higher heading into the winters. And so the idea here is to lock in the pricing now. And the reason we say that is more than ever, you may have heard us talking about it last year and last month, but ultimately it's really that time now. The projection is that prices will increase by sometime this spring. So, you certainly have probably the month of March to get some decent pricing for your customers. April, potentially, but again, let's get those bills now and get out in front of this because, you just never know in a post-pandemic year what can happen. Anyway, this gives you a good idea of where things are going. And so, again, we do strongly recommend that you get the bills and get those customers and help them out now, the electricity and natural gas bills. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. With this one, you can actually see as we exit the winters with below average natural gas levels exceeding expectations. And so, peak summer demand is likely to further restrict the inventories that are leading to the low prices heading into the winter, which is putting that upward pressure. So you can see that cyclical cycle there. And again, we're seeing that continue. So let's move to the next one. With this slide, it's a nice one, and I like to spend a minute or two on it, just because it's got the visual representation of the areas you can sell electricity and natural gas. And just to be very clear, procurement is the name of the product that electricity and natural gas belong to. So those two products are called procurement. And with this slide, you can see the color coding. The green areas are actually deregulated states for electricity and natural gas. So those are probably the best areas to get the mind share of the customer. They already know they can switch services, things like that. Very mature markets, and also the brokers up in the Northeast. Customers know that there are energy brokers. It's a common thing. So again, the Northeast, very strong. The Midwest is also strong. As you can see there from the map, you've got a few states in the Midwest that are also deregulated for both. As you get into sort of a hybrid state, you see some of the blue states, and that's going to be natural gas only states. There's a few of those. So that's kind of explaining that one. You know, when you get to the gray states, this is the gray area, right, that we like to talk about. This would be a case where you have customers who have maybe over $5,000 of monthly spend in the same utility. And when I say that, I need to be clear that it's not the same state. So as long as you've got, you know, at least $5,000 in the same utility, let's just say you had 3 locations and each one had $2,000 per location, and they're in the same utility, then that would qualify potentially for a special type of arrangement where we can actually service their natural gas as well. We can switch them over. This is a huge benefit because, as you can see, it's almost ubiquitous coverage in terms of the gray area of the map. So it really helps us to do more in the US. So anyway, not to go through every single one of those, just a couple quick points to make. The fact that, you know, the reduction of monthly bills with double-digit commission, that's a huge benefit to customers. Customers need to save more than ever. And so the ability to give them a double-digit savings and get you a double-digit commission is huge. It's also recurring revenue, and it's a great way to get your customers even more sticky. Energy prices, you know, again, are trending up. And so, you know, that's something that customers need right now. And now is the time for that. It's just a billing change in energy. This is a big question we've had. So last year during the pandemic, we were actually able to help some really big customers when, frankly, telecom couldn't even install circuits at the time. So that's an example kind of what's there for everyone. And so, you know, there's no installation and there's no provisioning needed, right? So that's a key metric. Also, the utility still does the customer service, which is huge. You don't need to know how to support energy to sell it. You really don't. Most of the work's done up front, and we can help you through that process. It also comes from the same source, the energy. So unlike in telecom, where you're talking about the SLAs, and should I switch to SD-WAN and different things like that, there are no considerations for that. It's a very simple product that they're using today that they can save money on in a very simple motion. So my favorite, I think, is there's no tickler file in energy. What I'd recommend for everyone on this call is that you look at your customer base and say, okay, I'm going to jump in here and take action. And the way I'm going to do that is by talking to my customers and trying to lock them into today's relatively low rates, kind of like creeping up to the average rate right now. But again, there still is a huge opportunity right now for customers to save money and for you to retain your customers more as a result of bundling those services. That retention can go way up. We've seen that before. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. You know, and on this one, you know, we wanted to talk about our portfolio and just let you know exactly what we've got for you to sell in the energy space. And so we've got a very deep portfolio, and within it, you know, in addition to the electricity and natural gas that I just had talked about, you can see there's a lot of other recurring services on the left side of the slide. Those would include building controls, such as, you know, sensors, IoT, HVAC is a good example of that. You know, you can control everything from one pane of glass. This is really nice for those of you that are in cloud, but are kind of like, well, I'm not sure if I want to jump into energy. I don't know if I know enough. Again, you don't need to understand energy. You know, our team can help you with it. And the bottom line is that it's a golden opportunity for more recurring revenue. And once again, to retain your customers better with more than one product. You know, I think some others would be EV charging. It's very, very hot. Electric vehicle charging is really, really growing, and it actually is recurring. Although there is the charging stations is another thing we can tap. That's why you can see that on the right side of the slide there. Energy expense management, in the same motion that you use today to bring telecom expense management to your customers, we can actually help you with that as well. So you can bring those to us. We actually have vendors that can do both. So if someone has a telecom and an energy expense management need, bring them on. We can definitely do it. So on the right, you can see some of the services, LED lighting, water. We've got 2 products in the water space, valves that can help to reduce the spend. I literally have a valve here on my property, saving 35% on my water bill, which is really helping. And then we've also got a leak detection product. So think leakage in buildings, think metro areas, think right now, in some of the Northeast and Midwest. I mean, again, you've got some buildings that are getting hammered right now. Ultimately, the leakage of those buildings, we can put sensors in those buildings and detect the leaks before the client will ever know, have any idea that it's happening, and be proactive. Because as you probably know, first of all, that's the #1 insurance claim out there, is building, damage like that. So tremendous opportunity there. And then finally, solar and cogeneration, LED lighting. I think I mentioned that one, but these are all products that we can also bring to the table. Let's move to the next slide. And with this one, you may look familiar from the last slide, but what this one actually is a co-branded piece of collateral that you can actually put your logo on. So it's customer facing, and so you can put your logo on there. It's got a really good IoT quote on the bottom of it, very compelling for a customer. And we also would consider private labeling this piece for you if you give us a mini business plan. In other words, we want to know if you're going to private label, we want to know that you're very committed. So if you can imagine your logo on the upper right-hand corner of that piece, aside from kitty corner from the AppSmart logo, and then the bottom gray section, you can see there that has an area for your contact information. And so you can have that customized for your company. So with that, moving into the verticals, which I'm super excited to talk about today. So when we talk about getting strategic, verticals are probably the most strategic way to approach energy for the advisor model. So the space that you're in, it's just a golden opportunity for many reasons. Top verticals like healthcare, manufacturing, and hospitality, commercial real estate is probably the most sales enabling of these. And it's also very sticky with the data center vertical, as we will talk about shortly. So with that, going to the next slide here, I want to hand it off to Patrick Mason to talk about healthcare. Patrick?
Thanks, Vince. Yeah, every vertical has its nuances. Energy doesn't really know how it's being used within a building, but every vertical does have significant issues around it. Healthcare is they're busy saving lives, and their operations and the cost around that maybe not be top of mind. One case study and win that we had, I'd like to call this the gift that keeps on giving, because they're multi-location, 60+ facilities over 2 or 3 states, and they're growing quickly and acquiring new locations as we speak. And the advisor on this one early on just brought in this opportunity to aggregate the usage and normalize the bills and get the best rates possible. What we did uncover was in one location, which was actually the largest user, and this was a single location, out of the 60, we were able to save them over $150,000 over a 3-year term. So that's a significant win for the property and for the customer. Finding internal advocates, I think, and I'll talk about this more in healthcare, but I think there's internal advocates in every vertical. In this particular case, it was a senior VP who was in charge of sustainable operations and looking for savings around energy use. And this has laid the groundwork for what the advisor can now do in other solutions. This was a procurement solution for this particular healthcare vertical, but there's now opportunity for water efficiency and energy efficiency around LEDs. So let's move to the next slide. This, another manufacturing vertical, the internal advocate here was the CFO looking to save money. And this came from an advisor who had actually been successful closing procurement opportunities with smaller retail locations. Realized that he had some very, very large manufacturing clients using a lot of electricity. And from a webinar that we did mid last year, kind of a light bulb went off in his head saying, hey, I've got some really big users here. Let me go take a look at what they're doing and if we can save them money. And sure enough, it was a simple discovery question with the CFO, who again was just looking to save money on his electricity. They were managed by an old, outdated procurement model, which we took upon ourselves to implement a new model, and on top of which found a better rate on the cost of electricity. So another great vertical, manufacturing. They just, they're not busy saving lives like the the hospital or the healthcare industry. They're busy making stuff, but they also want to understand how they can improve their cost of energy. So two verticals that we had some great success with and great wins. This one happened to be a 50K monthly recurring contract value. So this is a large manufacturer that's actually a subsidiary of even a larger group. So this advisor is well incentivized to keep going and selling energy in this way. So those are the two verticals. Next, I think is up for Gerald, right, to talk about commercial real estate.
Good afternoon, good morning. Basically, I'm going to talk about the commercial real estate vertical. Much like any other vertical, not all solutions will be the same for it. In the space, you will see there will be some buildings that are already sustainable, and then you will have buildings that are much older that need to be retrofitted. And all the issues are different. Not one solution will fit all, but basically I'm going to give you an overview of the next two slides. Energy use is the single largest operating cost in commercial office buildings. It takes up to 1/3 of typical operating budgets, and the commercial real estate space accounts for about 17% of all energy usage in the United States. Commercial buildings, for the most part, in the US account for 20% of carbon dioxide emissions and about 80% of potable water consumptions. The vertical offers great opportunity for AppSmart and its partners. And you may say, why? Well, it's simple. The top line, the bottom line, the accrued value of the business will be brought in line with efficient energy services. One, sustainability certifications influence buyer and seller decisions. Two, corporate clients demand greener buildings. And three, green buildings bring financial benefits to clients. Green buildings lower operating costs. And I'll give you an example. I'm going to read from this. Simply, in a 200,000 square foot office building that pays $2 per square foot in energy costs, a 10% reduction in energy consumption can translate into an additional $40,000 of net operating income. At a cap rate of 8%, this could mean potential asset value boosts of close to $500,000. How do you network with CRE brokers? Okay, so green buildings consume about 29 to 50% less energy than non-green buildings. They use about 40% less water. They emit 33 to 39% less carbon dioxide, and green buildings depreciate less. I think I'm going to hand that off to Vince. Slide number 14.
Yes, thank you, Gerald. Appreciate that. So yeah, again, I think the background in this space is just, there's so much here. I mean, I know that a lot of the advisors today, a lot of you may either network with commercial real estate or you've heard about it. And there could never be a better time than right now. I mean, commercial real estate, they got hit pretty hard, right? Just like, if you look at it, hospitality too, right? There's a couple areas there. So there's a golden opportunity right now in that space. But I think Haley, we were on 14, right? So on this one, I just wanted to kind of speak quickly to a couple of the things here. So, what you've got here is, 3 common objections, right, that we've seen from all of you advisors. We've heard these before, and especially related to commercial real estate. So the first one, doesn't less energy mean that the tenants won't be as comfortable? And the answer is no. I mean, the efficiency, the improvements in the systems, HVAC that I had mentioned earlier, I mean, the improvements in it are so vast that at this point, that efficiency is something that if people aren't tapping it, they're really missing out. And the studies have indicated that the buildings have better performance. It's going to contribute in every way. The second objection we hear a lot is that it's too challenging to retrofit existing buildings. This is a common one. It's actually, the customers often will be like, okay, it seems too difficult. You'd be shocked how easy it is. The providers are aware of this. They have a lot of different flexibility in their programs to make sure that they adjust to what's needed for the customer. And so, ultimately, it's too expensive not to do it, I guess is a better way to put this. And so, it makes a massive difference. And the retrofitting technology has advanced so much. And then the final question, and this is a big one, I don't have the money right now. I don't have the capital. I don't have the budget for this. Very, very common, right? People automatically think, okay, I can't afford it. It's just not something. Now, first of all, with services, there may not be, this may be an existing service that we're talking about. You may just be able to save the money and that's it, right? So that's an easy one. I think with monthly subscriptions, they're available with no cost a lot of the time. And I think that the most important thing to know also here is that financing is not only available, but it's actually, you can get some amazing financing right now too. So just keep those things in mind. When these objections come up, we want to help you be able to address them appropriately and quickly, right? So let's go ahead and we can move to the next slide now. And this is actually a case study. And so this one is, talking about how a 20-floor office building, had an opportunity, they had a dilemma, right? So it's one of those things where, well, the three big things that we always see with customers: trust, time, and direction. They may not trust, like, okay, you are my telecom guy. Why should I use you for energy? And the reality is that AppSmart is my strategic partner, right? That's kind of a good way to answer that. Hey, I work with these guys very closely and they have a full team. Time, well, everyone doesn't have it, right? And so ultimately that objection, you got to handle it. You got to be ready for it. But again, this is a dilemma that this customer had. And then direction, we don't know where to go. We don't know what to look for, right? And so, with this and with, Energize and what we're doing, and this is the name sort of the app that we are launching very soon, onboarding, right? Focusing on getting all the information and the data into the system, 28 different pricing strategies, tracking, and this is huge, so that it automates it so that, you've got ongoing supplier connections and solicitation. And so you're going to constantly be refreshed with new pricing opportunities. Smart tech, we're using AI to power this thing. So it's very smart and it's going to help you with the analytics and everything else in the back end to help your customers make better decisions. And then finally, savings. You got some solid savings. This customer had received a very nice savings, and it continues, right? It like Patrick said, it's the gift that keeps on giving here. And so, this next slide really quickly also is a case study. And again, I mentioned, and I didn't mention before though, that, Tesla last summer passed up Toyota in terms of new sales, right? And then all of a sudden now you're seeing a bunch of manufacturers saying we're going to have all EV by 2030 or 2035. They're all committing to it right now. And so when you see that trend, you got to know that the EV world is going to really take off. One of the things I like to talk about with EV is, you put the charging station into the carport, you've got the LED lighting on the roof, and then you've got the solar on top, the energy trifecta. And this is a golden opportunity for those of you that have parking structures or very large facilities that have parking. So anyway, not to go too much into that, but the bottom line here is that this is a cloud-based platform to monetize the solution, and the rebates through the utility and state and federal back, make it perfect an opportunity for everyone. So with this one, that challenge of attracting the tenants to increase property value, turnkey solution, that was the challenge. The solution really focused on price, convenience, and compliance, and it was a pretty involved situation. But the best result is when the customer says to you, hey, the utilization's been, amazing. We have such an adoption rate that we never expected. and the income for the ownership, right? So it's a new source of income for them. So amazing way to apply that. So with that, I want to hand it back over to Gerald to kind of wrap up the commercial real estate space and talk about the 7 steps. This is my favorite, Gerald.
Okay. Basically, how do you network within the CRE brokers space? There are various ways to do that, but the most specific ones that we came up with were as follows. Post on commercial database sites. There aren't a lot of them, but there are 2 that are pretty decent. One, the broker list, and actually it's spelled BROKER, capital LIST, and Real Connects, REAL Connects, CONNEX. 2, provide energy efficiency education and materials to the brokers. The big issue for them is there's an educational gap, misunderstanding, as we spoke about before, about how costly these things are, and that might not be the case. 3, utilize AppSmart's marketing tools and materials, and also the support. Vince and Patrick have a wealth of knowledge, so I would suggest use them. Create your own online presence. That's very important. Participate in social networking sites such as LinkedIn. And most importantly, establish yourself as an authority on energy efficiency. And that's quite easy to do. You can access information from various organizations. And I can give you that information at a later date. But groups like Energy Star, there's the US Energy Information Administration. And then, of course, Deloitte has done a lot of great studies, Gartner, and also Google. And be prepared for a detailed closing cycle. It won't be simple. Many businesses, commercial businesses, have hired energy advisors, so they will know what they're seeking. How do we go after increased business in the CRE? It's brokers. Brokers are the connective tissue between property owners and tenants. As such, they greatly influence how building owners and tenants approach and invest in energy efficiency. And as I stated before, the biggest issue is the knowledge gaps. And we want to narrow that, because these gaps impact building performance. They create a lack of focus on energy upgrades and creates roadblocks to a business. 1, lowering operating costs, increasing asset value, and tenant satisfaction, which is very important. Now, why should brokers be interested? Well, tenants are more conscious and educated. We see this every day. Also, new development activity in the commercial space is at record lows across most property types. So they need, access, something that's going to make them competitive, and heightened competition for tenants. That ends my slide.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Gerald. Shifting gears a little bit, and again, we'll wrap up a little bit later on some of these and connect the dots on the verticals for you. But in the meantime, hospitality, right, is another one that we want to talk about. And so I want to hand it off to Patrick again to talk hospitality. Patrick.
Thanks. And great case studies. I mean, it's kind of realizes your vision, Vince, from years ago in selling energy. And to Gerald's point, a lot of commercial operations are now hiring or empowering brokers, and we want to empower the channel, the advisors on this call, to be those brokers for their clients, using the tools that we've put together and the portfolio that we have. So I do have a background in hospitality. Originally, I worked for Sheridan for many years as a purchasing director, food and beverage controller, assistant GM, and was on that track until I found energy. But that's a different story. So I have a little bit of knowledge. This slide kind of shows the breakdown of energy use. Hospitality is interesting because the product that hospitality delivers is the experience that the guest has, and every guest will have a different experience based on the reaction to the product that the hotel is delivering. So operators are really, really sensitive to that, especially on the higher end 4 or 5 star resorts, resort properties, where you talk about efficiency or making any changes to a formula that works, they get a little bit tentative because they don't want to disrupt what the product is. There's nothing worse than a bad review, regardless of if you're saving money or not. The guest is king and that experience is king. But there are ways to save in the hospitality vertical, and improved income translates to higher asset value, similar to what Gerald was mentioning before about commercial real estate. And this can be quantified based on financial metrics that the hotel operators use, such as RevPAR, which is revenue per available room, and ADR, which is average daily rate. A lot of hotels have a significant amount of rooms out of circulation. Their inventory is tapped because they're either doing renovations or things are broken within a room. So they're always looking for ways to keep their revenue per available room high and their costs associated with those rooms low. Average daily rate, it's interesting in the hotel market, it's not a static price. Rates change from season or even by competition. So a room that's selling for $300 a night in July may be selling for $50 a night, well, maybe not that low, $150 a night sometime in December. So seasonality changes that, and while the experience of the guest is key, they're still very keen on how to save money when they can. So let's move to the next slide. Opportunities, yeah, every vertical has similar opportunities, procurement strategy, efficiency, smart controls. But I think for the hotel industry, what really stands out is these green or sustainable initiatives, the smart controls, the EV charging, because they really use those to incentivize or to show the value of their brand through PR and marketing. So operating in a way that's sensitive to the environment, having EV solutions to attract guests with EV driving cars, all as a way to continue to increase their brand awareness and to make guests more comfortable using the property based on their persona. People are attracted to boutique hotels or different brands based on how the brands are delivering that product. They call it a psychographic to the guest. Not to go too deep, but every guest profile has a difference in what they want, and they'll be attracted to brands based on what the brands are offering. So again, the opportunities around procurement, that's easy. Just give us the bills. We'll give you a high level assessment of what's possible. Energy efficiency, smart controls, which is interesting because the guests can then have their own experience by smart thermostats in the rooms, dialing in a temperature that's appropriate for them that may not be appropriate for the next guest. So the more control you can give to the guest in their own environment, the better they're going to have. And the smart controls also help. We're all guilty of this, checking into a hotel room and cranking the AC way up and then leaving, right? So when you come back, the room is nice and cold. Well, smart controls within a hotel managed by the operator can still give that guest that experience, but also reduce the cost. Next slide. Common objections, again, relevant to all the verticals. I don't have time. I'm already in agreement. I don't want to jeopardize the guest experience. That's one that really resonates towards the hotel. So guest satisfaction has been shown to be increased through a thoughtful approach to energy use. And again, that goes back to marketing the fact that they're operating in a sustainable way. Messaging that if you don't want your linens washed every day, then leave them on the bed. If you want them washed, throw them in the tub. We've all seen that messaging. So things to be sensitive to when talking to the hotel industry, but also understanding that they are very sensitive to pricing, and that competitions from Airbnb, the recent COVID, obviously that everyone's suffering from, they're really figuring out ways to improve their bottom line. And energy efficiency and the tools that we have for you guys are key to doing that. Next slide. A great case study in hospitality, one of our partners who had a predictive automation control for HVAC. And we talk about HVAC a lot because, especially in this case, this was a casino in the desert. HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning is a significant cost of energy. So we deployed a smart sensor solution with predictive automation that allowed the HVAC systems to run at a particular time of day when energy cost was less. It still effectively achieved a level of comfort within the property that was satisfactory, probably even better because cold air wasn't blowing at the wrong times, but also saved because the times that the cooling was done was at a time of day when the rates from the utility were less. So it's just one example of how you can go in and very surgically apply a technology to a solution that's your biggest consumer of electricity, but still retain the guest comfort and experience that's necessary for the hotels to succeed.
Hey, Patrick, quick question, if I may, about hospitality. Would you kind of agree with my assessment that right now there's a really good opportunity there because of last year they're trying to make up for the lost profits and stuff like that? Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think so. They were shut down for well, everyone knows how long we've been shut down for. But most of the guest is king, obviously, and that's the product. But hotels really make their money on function space, meetings, food and beverage, alcohol sales. All that took a hit to their bottom line. That's their most profitable section or segment of hospitality. Rooms, not so much. Rooms are necessary. But they took a huge hit. Sure, 80% of their revenue was gone just by the fact that people couldn't meet, socialize in settings that we were accustomed to. Think of Las Vegas and all that happens.
Yeah, it's a golden opportunity there, I think. So again, it's about getting out there and networking with all these folks, and we'll tie that back in a little bit later. Thank you, Patrick. And now I'd like to move on to Bob West to talk about the data center vertical. Bob.
All right, great. Thank you for attending today. And
wait a minute, Bob, are you in a data center? Oh man, that's awesome.
I know. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so thanks for attending. Today, there's a huge opportunity in the data center space. This is one aspect of commercial real estate that really thrived during the pandemic. As you can imagine, demand for cloud infrastructure, demand for new applications, network connectivity, really driving data center demand over the last couple of years. In fact, record-breaking growth for the amount of data centers and power added to the grid. And you can see here's just some quick stats. There's approximately 2 to 3 million data centers in the US right now, right? So there's a ton of opportunity out there. Some are newer, some are old, some are hyperscale, huge facilities, some are almost just shipping containers at the bottom of a cell tower, right? And when we talk about edge computing and things like that, these are all projected to really grow over the coming years. You'll also notice that I've included some active markets, and I want to align those with some of our offerings in AppSmart Energy with deregulated electricity and gas. And I also want to talk a little bit about smart buildings, smart tech, and how those are used in data centers. So we'll go ahead and jump right into the next slide. Yeah, so a lot of data centers have been around since the 70s and 80s, and unfortunately, a lot of them are aging out, and they're extremely inefficient, right? And we're all trying to figure out what to do with these older data centers. And one thing is energy efficiency is just killing them. Old HVAC systems, power delivery, capacity is just not there, right? And new large-scale, hyperscale data centers are really taking away from the small mom-and-pop data centers. And that's where the focus is. And you can see that really those are going to be the main drivers of growth in the future. However, we still have that problem of what to do with these older data centers. Are they going to become edge data centers, with smaller capacity? So optimizing power and efficiency is really important. Smart building technology is going to be hugely important, and bringing down those power costs so that they're manageable and making them predictable. All right, next slide, please. All right, so really, who is the target audience for the data center space when it comes to energy? And you're really looking at state, regional, federal governments and agencies. There's companies like State Farm, there's private companies out there nationwide, hosting companies own their own data centers. There's even equipment manufacturers like NVIDIA that have got into the data center space to provide streaming capabilities. There's also a lot of research and development done in the universities, and they all typically have labs and data centers that are internal to them. I talked about edge computing and, some of these cell phone or cell companies, wireless companies, 5G companies, they are building edge data centers at their bases. So that's an opportunity as well. And then, of course, hyperscalers are the Googles, the Amazons, Microsofts that are building large wholesale type data centers or cloud data centers. And then you also have wholesale operators that are building hyperscale data centers to resell to some of the cloud service providers as well. And last but not least, there are giant cryptocurrency mining farms in development in Texas and elsewhere that are investor backed by investors like Peter Thiel and others. And we're talking $500 million investment funds that are going into building large scale crypto mining farms. There's also the smaller players, but I would focus on mid to large scale cryptocurrency mining farms. All right, next please. Yeah, so, we really, when you look at the data center space and consumption, it's really electricity that is being used in the data center. Not so much on the natural gas front. There is natural gas, obviously, usage, but they're really large consumers of electricity. In fact, they're one of the largest consumers. A 10 megawatt data center it'll power about 8,000 homes or 16 square miles of highly dense homes. So they really are definitely huge consumers of electricity. You could actually even say that not only are they consumers, but they're resellers of electricity. And that makes it also a very competitive marketplace, where they're competing to secure their bottom lines and also their pricing to end user customers. So you can see on the map, all the green are areas that I would recommend focusing on within the data center vertical. It's areas like Texas with Dallas, Houston, and Austin. New York, obviously, is a huge draw for data centers. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, again, financial industry, they rely on the data center industry there. Illinois is definitely another big one, and Ohio as well. So definitely focus on the green areas of the map and some of these top markets that align with those areas. Next, please. Yeah, so where do you find information on data centers? The Uptime Institute has a huge database of both public and private data centers. And when we talk about the private ones, we're talking about like Nationwide, State Farm, Goldman Sachs, some of these ones, those are harder to find. But on Uptime Institute, you can see the ones that are certified for different certifications and so forth in the industry. And that's a really good place to start to see what data centers are in what markets and kind of create a list of potential customers there. You can also use datacenters.com, which has a lot of the co-location and cloud providers on it, along with all their data centers, and Data Center Hawk as well with data centers and real estate listings. So those are all really good sources to start creating a lead list or a prospecting list. And then, all right, next slide. I also like leveraging data on the data center real estate market and seeing who's buying and selling. This data is a little bit older, but it does have, you can track the flow of deals and who owns what. And that gives you a little bit more insight to find decision makers within the data center space that could potentially, be interested in these services. All right.
Hey, Bob, just a quick question, Bob. With this one, I love this slide, by the way. Is this information available to the advisors or?
Yeah, most of the big brokerages like Cushman Wakefield, JLL, CBRE, and others, they put out annual reports or quarterly reports, and a lot of this information is just public information that you can find. And I'll send out, when I follow up with this, I'll send out some links to some sources where you could actually find this information. But yeah, it's readily available to advisors.
Fantastic. And it, once again, showing how it's really sticky with the commercial real estate space, right? In fact, what was interesting, we were talking with a data center, and the person making the decisions for the purchase actually worked for Coldwell Banker. So it was actually interesting that they didn't even work for the data center. So it's very, very connected, those two industries. Thanks, Paul.
That's a really good point as well. And, when you're targeting these data centers and you're targeting specific decision makers, a lot of times you will find that there's a commercial real estate broker or agent in that deal. There's also property management, which is often managed by the big brokerages like CBRE. So, definitely networking with those circles are a good start to try to, uncover opportunities. In addition to that, if you are prospecting, once you've identified some data centers in the area or markets that you want to work, here's some titles that you could, potentially look at as entry points to get the conversation started. Whether it's an email campaign or a LinkedIn outreach, or even a phone call, just look at these different titles and see, within the organization if any of these exist. And then, obviously create a contact list around that. You'll probably have one or more of these. And so it's a good rule of thumb to kind of reach out to all of them or ask, who makes decisions relating to energy. And you're probably going to have to get executive buy-in as well. You'll probably need somebody to help you get in with a CFO as well once you get past, kind of the gatekeepers and having those initial conversations. But I do like to look on, there's a lot of great resources on LinkedIn. You can study, some of the job postings that are going on within the data center space on Indeed, ZipRecruiter. You can kind of see what the responsibilities are. And that's just all arming you with the information you need to reach out and, contact some of these prospects. Data center knowledge is a really good source of information on what's going on in the industry. And last but not least, I would also recommend, if you're wanted to attend any events, it would be Data Center World. You'll see a lot of people that are making these type of decisions. So, all right. Here's the last slide I'm going to share today. And basically, these are just some things to go in armed with your conversation. Obviously, you want to talk about deregulated energy markets and the associated electricity cost savings and creating that stable cost for the organization to help their bottom line and help them stay competitive. In addition to that, this is huge for the industry. It's received a black eye for how much energy consumption it's used and emissions are out there. Definitely going green, 100% renewable, powered by renewable energy. You see that a lot. So the renewable energy certificates to offset the carbon footprint, that's huge right now in the space. Smart building technology, this is definitely the future. Very, very lucrative and a lot of demand here. Data centers need to monitor things like humidity levels, airflow, pressure, water. There's just, a million data points that they need to maintain to ensure a really stable and climate-friendly environment for servers and storage devices and so forth. Water flow optimization, data centers use a lot of water. So, being able to save them money on water, recycling water, monitoring water, and also reducing water usage is going to be huge for them. Those are all pain points for the data center. And then last but not least, to coincide with the image, on-site solar, battery storage, and backup systems. We all know that data centers rely heavily on redundancy, and this is a key point. There are data centers that are investing in solar and in battery storage and backup systems. So that's important as well. But I'd really focus on the top 4 here first, in arming yourself with conversations with key decision makers. All right. Next to
Awesome, Bob.
Vince.
Thanks so much for that.
Sure.
You know, when we look at the actions here, right, we wanted to tie this back together for everyone. So Patrick, did you want to just quickly touch on hospitality? I mean, I'm happy to touch on these other bullets if needed, but I know you've come from that space. So anything to add on those bullets? Or
it kind of lays it out. I mean, COVID has definitely had an impact, but reminder, Airbnb is taking a significant chunk out of the hotel market. Owners are not too happy about that. They have a strong lobbying group with the American Hotel Lodging Association to fight for that. And I would recommend, similar to what Bob was saying about places to go find, lists of people that you can network with that are a great place to start. And Green Lodging Association as well. Those are more like-minded properties that are already making inroads into efficiency. And I can send those out and have those available after the call as well. But you know, obviously, Probe raised the question. Every hotel has their team of internal advocates. Mostly, it's actually employees that are empowered to meet goals. So if you can network and find those people and start raising the question and advise them that you are an energy broker and have the tools available to hit all the targets necessary for efficiency, you're on your way, and we're here to support you.
nice, thank you, Patrick. So Gerald, anything? I love the 7-step approach. I mean, I think it's something that everyone can use, and I think hopefully we'll take advantage of that. And then the self-education. Anything else to add on that, just real quick?
Just basically before COVID, I think there was a ramp up of people going more businesses, commercial real estate businesses going greener. But that's been in overdrive since COVID. And you know, you would think that because businesses, commercial real estate offices are either empty or semi-empty, that there would be some savings, but that's not the case. They're still using huge amounts of energy. They're using 84 to 97% of their typical demand. And this is basically due that they don't have they're not up to date with their smart management. And so their heating and ventilation systems are not in congruence with what's going on, and not taking into account that the occupancy is not there. So I would say that, yeah, this market is going to explode and continue to be open.
Nice, appreciate that background. And again, I think that with commercial real estate, and as I mentioned before, I think commercial real estate and data centers, there's a lot of stickiness here. So, you know, a couple of things on that, you know, obviously, like mentioned, you know, the commercial real estate is actually a foundation to the data center conversation. It's cross-functional. And then, you know, again, as I alluded to, many are run by brokers. Anything else to take away from you, Bob, on data centers real quick?
No, not really, other than, you know, the big thing that I want to, you know, stress is that 61% of the electricity consumed by data centers all goes to their cooling, power distribution, and other, which is just keeping the lights on, right? And so it's definitely something to focus on. And I think it's a winning strategy to go after these data centers, and you know, commercial real estate is a good entry point for it, for sure.
Nice, appreciate that. Okay, I guess we can move on from there. And so, you know, in looking at how to tie all this together, you know, it's, if you think about it, right, think about the commercial real estate tenant list, right? Just think about that and visualize that for a minute, because you can really you can create an energy store overnight with this, and with the right strategy in these verticals, you can get so much more out of what you're doing today, a whole new area of the business. You know, number one, you know, enter your contact information, right? So if it's a tenant list or whatever, you know, you can enter that in there. Number two, you can track the opens of those tenants or those the people that receive that communication. And and schedule a reach out, right? So it's pretty easy to do that. It's all automated. And then number 3 is the dashboard and analytics. And to Gerald's point, tap our team. I mean, it's, we're here for you to help you with that. But the bottom line here is that you can literally plug, and it doesn't have to be, you could do it today with your standard customer base and just go upsell energy. There is an energy campaign. You can see some of the assets right there on the screen in what's called AppSmart Marketer. You can see that on the left-hand corner there. And so again, the pre-built programs are just plug and play. I mean, you can ultimately just literally overnight stand up an energy store. So let's move on from that one, and just quickly touch on the spiff. So we have one more month for you to make some extra cash. On this one, think of a $2,000 deal on a 3-year term. We do a lot of those deals, and you have customers right now that are easily spending that much money. And so be happy to look forward to actually paying these spiffs out. I mean, again, it's a great time right now. So get those bills, and you can take advantage of this spiff. The next slide just kind of alludes to a super exciting event that we have coming up in April. And so, April, please save the date, April 20 to 21 for Unleash. I love the name. We are going to be unleashing, and you can get details and register at unleash.appsmart.com. Once again, unleash.appsmart.com, and you can register for that. It's going to be game changing, so don't miss it. On this last slide, we, again, as a reminder, getting the bills is the key to all of this. Just get the electricity, natural gas, water, even waste. Those are the 4 bills that we kind of look for. You can see on the screen that you don't need to get them all for if you're just looking at procurement. If you're just looking at gas or electricity, then that would be what you get. Efficiency, like if you're looking at LED, solar, different things like that, the electricity bill is huge for that. We need to know what they're currently doing in their supply. Water and waste, again, it's the same thing. Look at the water and waste bills, even the recycling bill. And again, we keep it simple. It's energy@appsmart.com. So all you need to do is just get those bills, send them over to us, and we will help you with that process. So, please take a moment to go into the chat. There is a brief link in there that's been placed in the chat. We'd love your feedback on this webinar. Also, if you go in there, you can say, hey, I want some collateral. I'd like to schedule a call, whatever. You can let us know what you need from us to kind of spin up your energy and get it moving. Don't miss the next Winter Energy webinar, March 24th. We'll be talking about that new automation that we've been alluding to. Super excited about that. It's the Energize app. And if you want that collateral materials, again, we're ready to get them for you. Sending a logo is what we would need to co-brand it for you. And so I want to thank Bob, Gerald, Patrick, Mark, Haley, and all of you for joining. We'll see you next month. And until then, good energy to everyone. Thanks.